She came to find out about her mother's death from her father, but she encountered the greatest shock of her life. Will she uncover the truth before it's too late? This is the story.
The fog clung to the earth like a living thing, a gray veil that swallowed the world beyond the windshield of Maeve Harper's battered sedan. She navigated the twisting, gravel-strewn road that snaked through the dense forest, her headlights slicing through the mist in feeble arcs. The air was heavy with the scent of damp pine and the faint, brackish tang of the unseen lake nearby. Maeve, a journalist in her 30s, with eyes that had seen too many half-truths, gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles pale against the worn leather. This journey was not one of sentiment or reunion. It was a pilgrimage to unearth the buried truth about her mother's death, a wound that had festered for years. Her father, Dr. Leonard Harper, waited at the end of this road in his secluded lakeside cabin, a man she had not seen in a decade, a man whose shadow loomed large over her fractured memories. The cabin emerged from the fog like a relic from a forgotten time. Its timber walls were weathered to a dull gray, the sagging porch creaking under the weight of years and neglect. The lake beyond was invisible, its presence marked only by the soft lapping of water against the shore, a rhythm that pulsed through the mist like a heartbeat. Maeve parked, her boots crunching on the gravel as she stepped out, the cold air biting at her exposed hands. She approached the door, her breath visible in the damp chill, and knocked. The sound echoed, swallowed quickly by the fog. After a pause that stretched her nerves taut, the door creaked open, revealing Leonard. His once commanding frame was stooped, his silver hair unruly, but his blue eyes, sharp and unyielding, met hers with a flicker of surprise, perhaps even dread. He stepped aside, gesturing her into the cabin without warmth, as if inviting a storm into his sanctuary. Inside, the air was thick with the musty scent of old wood and the faint antiseptic bite of something clinical out of place in this rustic retreat. The living room was dim, lit only by a flickering fire in the hearth and a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Shelves sagged under the weight of dusty books, and a faded photograph of Maeve's mother sat on the mantel, her smile frozen in time. Maeve's chest tightened at the sight, memories of her mother's gentle voice warring with the questions that had driven her here. Leonard poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid glinting in the firelight, his movements slow and deliberate, as if measuring each second to avoid her gaze. Maeve settled onto a worn couch, its springs groaning under her weight, and felt the fog pressing against the windows, a silent conspirator sealing them in this claustrophobic space. Her phone, useless in the fog's oppressive grip, showed no signal, leaving her isolated with the man who had raised her, yet remained an enigma. The evening unfolded like a slow-burning fuse, each moment heavy with unspoken accusations. Maeve's purpose burned within her, to confront Leonard about her mother's death, which he had always claimed was a tragic accident during a routine hospital procedure. But her years as a journalist had taught her to distrust easy answers. Whispers from hospital records, dug up in late-night searches through dusty archives, pointed to malpractice, to surgeries gone wrong under Leonard's skilled but flawed hands. She watched him move about the kitchen, preparing a meager dinner of bread and stew, his back turned as if shielding himself from her scrutiny. The clink of his knife against the cutting board echoed in the silence, a metronome to her racing thoughts. She wandered the cabin, her fingers trailing over the rough walls, seeking clues in the shadows. The study beckoned, a cluttered room of chaos where papers spilled from drawers and diplomas hung crookedly, relics of a career that had crumbled under rumors of failure. In the study, Maeve's breath caught as she uncovered a hidden folder beneath a stack of yellowed journals. Her flashlight beam danced across the pages, revealing medical records that told a story of negligence, botched operations, hushed complaints, and most chillingly, her mother's name scrawled in Leonard's precise handwriting. The documents spoke of errors, of a surgery gone wrong, of a cover-up that had cost her mother's life. Maeve's pulse thundered in her ears, the room spinning as she pieced together the fragments. Why had Leonard kept these records? Was it guilt, a confession in paper, or something darker, a trophy of his sins? She tucked the folder under her jacket, her hands trembling, when a sharp knock at the cabin door shattered the silence. Leonard answered, and through the crack of the door, Maeve glimpsed a woman, Ellie, a local delivery driver with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to see too much. Her coat was damp from the fog, her boots caked with mud, as she handed Leonard a package of supplies. Her gaze flicked to Maeve, lingering with an intensity that felt like a warning. Ellie's voice was low, her words barely audible over the crackle of the fire, but they carried a weight that settled in Maeve's bones, a caution to leave before nightfall, for the lake held dangers that did not sleep. As Ellie retreated into the fog, her figure dissolving into the gray, Maeve felt a chill deeper than the autumn air. Dinner followed, a tense affair where the clatter of spoons against bowls was the only sound. Leonard's charm surfaced in fleeting moments, weaving tales of his quiet retirement, but his eyes darted to the windows, betraying a restlessness that mirrored her own. As night deepened, the fog thickened, wrapping the cabin in a suffocating embrace. A sudden crash outside jolted Maeve from her thoughts, a heavy thud like a branch snapping under unseen weight. Her heart raced as she grabbed her flashlight and stepped onto the porch, the beam cutting through the mist to reveal nothing but shadows among the trees. Yet for a fleeting moment, she swore she saw a figure, a silhouette, tall and motionless, watching from the edge of the forest. The fog seemed to pulse with intent, hiding whatever lurked beyond. She retreated inside, her breath uneven, and confronted Leonard. He dismissed the noise as wildlife, his voice smooth but laced with an edge that betrayed his calm. Maeve's instincts, honed by years of chasing truths in dark corners, told her otherwise. She waited until Leonard retired to his room, his footsteps heavy on the creaking stairs, before slipping out again, drawn to the locked shed at the property's edge. The fog clung to her like a second skin as she approached the shed, its padlock glinting dully in the moonlight. With a hairpin from her bag, a trick learned from breaking into locked offices for a story, Maeve picked the lock, the click loud in the oppressive silence. Inside, the air was thick with the metallic tang of steel and antiseptic. Her flashlight revealed a chilling scene. Surgical tools lined the shelves, their blades gleaming with cold precision, alongside monitors and sutures that belonged in a hospital, not a lakeside retreat. Amid the clutter, she found a photograph, her mother, radiant and smiling, her arm around a stranger whose face was unfamiliar, yet hauntingly familiar. The image stirred a memory Maeve couldn't grasp, a fragment of her childhood buried deep. Questions swirled. Who was this stranger? What tied them to Leonard's past? Before she could process the discovery, a creak from the cabin drew her back, Leonard's shadow moving in the dim light. The confrontation came like a storm breaking. Maeve stormed into the living room, the photograph clutched in her hand, her voice trembling with years of pent-up grief. Leonard stood by the fire, his face a mask of resignation, the whiskey glass forgotten on the table. Under the weight of her accusations, his defenses crumbled. He confessed in halting fragments, his voice low and heavy with shame. Years ago, as a celebrated surgeon, he had operated on a young boy, a procedure that went catastrophically wrong. The boy's death was a tragedy, but the family's grief turned to vengeance, blackmailing Leonard with threats of exposure. Maeve's mother, caught in the crossfire, had died during a surgery meant to silence a witness, a desperate act to protect Leonard's reputation. The truth landed like a physical blow, tearing open old wounds. Maeve's vision blurred with tears, the cabin's walls closing in as the fog outside seemed to seep through the cracks, blurring reality itself. But the night was not done with its horrors. A shattering of glass exploded through the cabin, the kitchen window splintering as a figure burst through the door. The intruder was tall, hooded, his eyes burning with a rage that had simmered for years. He was the brother of the boy Leonard had failed, a man who had tracked the disgraced surgeon to this remote exile, driven by a hunger for justice. His gun glinted in the firelight, its barrel sweeping the room as he advanced. Leonard raised his hands, his face pale, but the intruder's gaze locked on Maeve, seeing her as an extension of her father's sins. The air crackled with tension, the fog outside muffling any hope of rescue. Maeve's heart pounded, her mind racing for a way to survive this collision of past and present. Chaos erupted like a dam breaking. Ellie reappeared at the doorway, her presence a shock that deepened the mystery. She had been no mere bystander. She had been feeding the intruder information, tracking Leonard's movements, her own motives tied to the tragedy that had claimed the boy. Her eyes met Maeve's, a silent acknowledgement of shared pain, but her allegiance was unclear. The intruder's gun swung wildly, his voice a growl of accusations that echoed Maeve's own. In a surge of instinct, Maeve lunged for a fireplace poker, its iron cold in her hands. The struggle was brutal, a whirlwind of shadows and desperation. She disarmed the intruder, the gun skidding across the floor, but not before a shot rang out, grazing Leonard's shoulder. He slumped against the wall, blood seeping through his shirt, his face etched with pain and regret. As the intruder lay subdued, bound with ropes from the shed, Maeve knelt beside her father. The wound was shallow, survivable, but the sight of his blood stirred a storm of emotions, anger, pity, betrayal. She bandaged it with strips torn from a blanket, her hands steady despite the turmoil within. Leonard's eyes pleaded for forgiveness, but Maeve felt only the weight of his lies. Ellie slipped away into the night, her parting glance heavy with secrets, the photograph of Maeve's mother clutched in her hand like a talisman. The fog began to lift as dawn crept over the horizon, the lake's surface shimmering faintly through the thinning mist. Maeve found a hidden landline in the study, her fingers trembling as she dialed for help, her voice steady but hollow. Sirens wailed in the distance as Maeve gathered her belongings, the cabin now a tomb of revealed truths. Leonard reached for her, his hand weak and trembling, but she stepped back, the chasm between them unbridgeable. She vowed silently that this would be their last meeting, the weight of his betrayal too heavy to carry further. Driving away, the road unfurled before her, the lake now a mirror reflecting the pale morning light. In her rearview mirror, she caught sight of Ellie standing at the roadside, her figure solitary against the fading fog. The photograph was still in her hand, a reminder that some secrets lingered, waiting to surface. Maeve's grip tightened on the wheel, her heart heavy but resolute as she drove toward a future unburdened by her father's sins, yet haunted by the shadows that refused to fade.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you in our next video.